On today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip and Steele, we are diving deep into Tuesday's jam-packed 11-game DFS and big-time bets board and doing a little Who Would You Rather special with two big-name goalies.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Party people in the place to be for the Puck Podcast. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip and Steele. We are back for episode number 29 of the reboot of this show. And thank you for riding with us every single day, Monday to Friday. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Guys, welcome back. Today's episode features a deep dive. I say it every week, but we are diving deep into a juicy 11-game board for DFS targets and some big-time bets. We're keeping it rolling for this Tuesday episode. We're also diving back into what we do best here, a little Who Would You Rather, Steele. And we know the fans out there love when we talk goalies. I love when we talk goalies. We know this is a key part of any fantasy team that can make or break you, Steele. So we're going to take a look at two guys that I think, are solid goalies, but at the end of the day, it's Who Would You Rather. And, I'm happy to be here doing this again with you, brother. Welcome back.
Hey, I'm always glad to be here with you, Flip. Always talking hockey, the favorite thing that I love discussing more than anything else. So always glad to be back here with you. And before we get into the Who Would You Rather, I think we do have to discuss Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars. And tremendous weekend for him.
I forgot all about Mr. Robertson, and how could I? How could
you, Flip? You can't forget the back-to-back hat-tricks over the weekend. Absolutely incredible for him.
Yeah, that's impressive. I don't think, we don't have the stats up, but that back-to-back from a kid who I would say has flown mostly under the radar, and except for dedicated hockey circles, because of where he plays.
Yeah.
It's also nice to see for the Dallas Stars team that I think it is fair to say that has been carried by veteran players, especially up front, to see a little bit of youth come forward for a Dallas Stars team that, is on the bubble in the Western Conference.
Yeah, it is. Robertson's name is now known. Him and Rupe Hintz, the chemistry that they have on the first line, absolutely tremendous. But Robertson has just absolutely flown and soared with this Dallas Stars team. 100 points in 101 games. Absolutely incredible for him. And look, he's on the last year of his entry-level contract with the Stars. He's going to get paid next season. I was just watching that game against the Minnesota Wild. They were discussing about the equivalent numbers between him and Joe Pavelski, and Pavelski's making $7 million this year. Yeah. He could easily make $6.57 million, on his next contract. Hopefully they can sign him for long-term 7-8 years, but this guy's going to get paid. His name is going to be known across for many, many years to come. I was just talking to my buddy, a funny story. One of the guys in my fantasy league, he had him for the first 2 weeks of the year back in October when he was injured. He dropped him right before he came back from injury. Ouch. And what a tremendous mistake that was for him. So
that's a slip.
This guy's going to be drafted early on in the next couple of years for fantasy leagues, and rightfully so.
Most definitely rostered in over 90% of ESPN leagues. I don't know how the number's at 90 or 91. I don't know how it's not 99.9. Maybe it will be after the love that he's gotten, over the past couple of days. I mentioned the Dallas Stars being on the bubble. If this kid continues to play like this, like you mentioned, the chemistry on the top line with Hintz, which can't be denied. If they continue to click, it might be just enough. If Jake Ottinger can figure it out in the net for the Stars, it might be just enough to squeak them into the playoffs. And we know that this team has playoff caliber. So over the past handful of seasons, so we can see maybe the veterans turn it on down the stretch as well. But, a couple of the names that we also want to talk about here are in the blue paint. We're looking at guys in Leonard and John Gibson, two guys that I don't want to say are in that top tier of goalies, but they're just under that, I would say, Steele. So guys that are very, very relevant in all platforms. We know goaltending is the hardest position to draft and maintain. So we're looking at Robin Lehner and John Gibson. And I'll start it right off. I'm going with Leonard Steele. And for one of the reasons, if it's this season I'm looking at it because I like Vegas's chances down the stretch more than I like the Ducks in terms of an advantageous situation for wins and good spots. I also like the fact that Leonard, sure, he's been injured. You never want a guy to be injured. I don't like that he's been injured, but we've talked about guys having rest at key points of the season. Yes, he was injured, but he was recovering and he wasn't playing a ton of games. He's only played in 37 games this season. So I could see him getting a lot more starts down the stretch. 21, 14, and 1 this year, 909 save percentage, mediocre, 2.79 goals against. But last year, William Jennings trophy winner as the goalie who allowed the least goals with 25 minimum starts. He's a good goalie. I think it's clear, Steele, but I don't know what you think overall. I know you like Gibson a little bit better, but what are you thinking about this angle, pal?
Looking at the stats from the season, they're very similar. Gibson, he's played 40 games, so just 3 more than Leonard. 17 wins compared to Leonard's 21. The save percentage and goals against average, very, very close. So they've had very similar stats this year. But look, if we were talking 3 years ago, John Gibson's name was in the consideration for best goalie in the league. His name was always there, but because he's still on the Anaheim Ducks team that, just a couple of years ago, we're at the bottom of the league, weren't really producing, struggling against, all the teams in the NHL. So there was a lot of rumors going around, like get John Gibson out of Anaheim. You need to save his career right now. But look what's happened this year with the Anaheim Ducks. They're still in the bubble, fighting for a playoff spot. They had a very strong start to this season, but
yeah, they deserve some credit. I think what you're saying is spot on, but they've played, I think, way above what what I expected anyway.
Way above than what I think a lot of us expected. But again, the young talent they have on their team was not to be denied. I think before the season started, I had them just making the playoffs, like in the 4th spot or in the wild card spot. But I was very surprised, how well they started to start the season. And then, they kind of slipped, just like the San Jose Sharks, who have fallen off the top of that division as well. But for me, it's very, very easy decision. I got to go with John Gibson. He's 2 years younger than Robin Lehner. He's 28 years old. He's got more wins, less losses, more shutouts, and a better goals against average than Robin Lehner does in one less season total career span. So for me, he's got the better numbers. He's younger. Robin Lehner, you've mentioned it. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. And I don't think you're right that they're going to play Robin Lehner a lot down the second half of the season because he's dealt with injuries. If they want to preserve him for the playoffs where it really matters, I think they should play Laurent Brossoit a little bit more. Obviously not as much as Robin Lehner because you want him to get his confidence. You want him to be super sound in the crease going into the playoffs, but you don't want to overtire him still. So look, I think with the injuries, you got to, balance it between the both of them.
I disagree completely because Laurent Brossoit has proven that he cannot hold it down in that crease. And given how close that race is, you can't not risk playing your number one goalie 70, 80% of the time. They have to ride that. They have to ride Leonard down the stretch. We'll see what happens. But what's also interesting with the Golden Knights and why I do like the Leonard angle is they're starting to get healthy up front. Pacioretty is back. Eichel is really starting to look comfortable on that, in the unit up front with the top 6 forward group. I like where the needle is starting to point for Vegas overall. So that's kind of where I'm going with this a little bit. Also, I'll say this. Your overall point with the numbers for sure, but I'll also point out that Leonard has been a much better playoff and clutch performer with solid postseason numbers, 920 save percentage and a 14-14 record, 2.19 goals against. So we've seen that he can put it up in the playoffs as well. So it'll be interesting to see down the stretch, though. Maybe one of these guys can really take the reins for their team because I think it's clear that both of these guys are going to be really counted on down the stretch, which I think from fantasy side of things is a good thing for either of these guys. They're in important hockey games on decent teams. So I don't think you can really go wrong with either, but I'm leaning with a guy like Leonard who can also go, and I think we can agree on this, be very streaky.
Yeah, he can be very streaky, but to be fair, in those playoff runs, he had one of the best defensive teams in the league with the New York Islanders when he made that playoff run with them. And then as well with the Vegas Golden Knights the last couple of years, you can't be denied with Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, Braden McNabb, Alec Martinez, that defensive group is not one of the best in the leagues as well. So he's had very strong defensive groups in those playoff runs as well.
And guess what? He still does. So hammer Robin Leonard, because those everything you just said lines up, my friend. What else lines up, though, is BetOnline. And we've talked about this a lot. Football is over, but basketball is full steam ahead for both pro and college hoops. March Madness is around the corner. Get your bets ready. For all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs, and it remains the best spot for all the scores, sports podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. For your next listen, you have to go check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every single NHL game with analysis from our local experts. It's amazing. I watch it every night, listen to it every night as well. They give great analysis from this podcast. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like this podcast right here. So please make sure you hammer the subscribe, hammer the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the support out there, and it means the world to us that you like what you're hearing, listening to the podcast. And again, we just appreciate all the love out there and all the support. So thank you so much for that. Tuesday is a big night. A lot of games for Tuesday. 11 games on the schedule. Flip, you mentioned it from the start of the episode. A lot of games, a lot of great teams playing. I want to hear what you have to say. What kind of angle you're going with, because I think we're going to be a little bit different for Tuesday. The first matchup I'm looking at was the St. Louis Blues versus Ottawa Senators. Okay. And, I feel like we do talk about the Ottawa Senators a lot. And, from your perspective, they're going in the right. We've both sort of agreed that they're starting to go in the right direction, but it's still still very inconsistent.
It takes time.
But you're right. They have gotten a lot of their injured players back. They're still missing Drake Batherson, of course, but Josh Norris is back in the lineup, so that helps a lot.
Yep.
But I'm looking at this from a St. Louis Blues perspective.
Okay.
I think just I was looking at their entire lineup right now. That second and that third line is just so freaking good. And there's so much value and cheap options amongst those groups right there, those two lines, that it's just too juicy for me not to pass up on. So I have to go with either the second or third line, which is the second line being Tarasenko, Thomas, and Buchnevich, who we talked about on the last episode. And then the third line being Braden Shen, who you've mentioned a couple of times, Jordan Kyrou, and Ivan Barbashev. So there's a lot of value in all six of those guys right there on the St. Louis Blues, but there's also guys on the Ottawa Senators that can't be denied as well, like Alex Formenton, Artem Zub, Tim Stützle. So the six guys on the St. Louis Blues, they're going to be a lot more expensive than the Ottawa Senators players, but you're still looking in the range of $5,000 to $6,000, and then Barbashev and Thomas being a little bit cheaper, and then if you were going to go with the Ottawa Senators, they're down at the 4,000 range. So there's a lot of great value in this game for me.
For sure. I think we've also talked about the Blues at length as well.
Yeah.
But these are some of these teams that we talk about it from a DFS angle. You can get some really nice value and some guys that, looking at that Blues lineup, those are three solid lines. These are teams that roll three lines with, pretty solid track record here in terms of offensive output. So looking at Jordan Kyrou's playing on the third line for the St. Louis Blues must be nice. I know he struggled a little bit, but the fact that they have that kind of depth that you can just slide a guy down and give him some time to bounce back still, I see all kinds of odd value there. But I also see some value on the Blues blue line in guys like Torrey Krug. Colton Parayko might not jump off the page as an offensive guy, but he fills a lot of boxes, gets a lot of shots, hits. He's fourth in the league in blocked shots. So aside from just overall fantasy value, I think you can definitely find some DFS value on the Blues blue line, blah, blah, blah. Torrey Krug as well. So definitely double circle the St. Louis Blues tonight. Although, I do love me a little Ottawa Senators DFS action. So I don't think you can go wrong with Alex Formanton and those guys as well.
Well, just looking at how they played against the Vegas Golden Knights in that 2-1 loss over the weekend, like you've mentioned it, when they have their guys back in the lineup and they're all healthy, just like the New Jersey Devils have bounced back in the same way, when they're healthy, they're a different team. And we saw that over the weekend against the Vegas Golden Knights. So
Need
there's
a goalie.
lot of
they need a goalie bad.
They do need a goalie. I think Anton Forsberg has some promise to him. There's, I don't think Matt Murray's it. Honestly, just looking at his game, the injury prone that he's been
the injury thing, I think is really
huge
with him. You called that too when I said have a look at Murray, and literally 2 games later he got hurt. It seems it's getting worse and worse, right? As he gets older, it's seeming like he really can't be relied on. So anyway, I like where you're working.
He can't be relied on whatsoever. I like Anton Forsberg, even though it's just very difficult. They're trending in the right direction, but again, it's the Ottawa Senators who have had struggles ever since they made it, to the Eastern Conference Finals, like a couple, what was it, like back in 2016, 2017, when they played the Pittsburgh Penguins.
They went on a very good run. One of those,
and then after that, just went downhill.
Almost like what the Montreal Canadiens have done a little bit, right? Went on a crazy run and then turned it right back to the basement.
Pretty much. So it happens. I like Anton Forsberg, but again, it's not really an option I would lean towards because I think there's a lot more better goalies out there on the market. But that's what happens with the Ottawa Senators. So it just happens with them. They're trending in the right direction, but nonetheless, I'll get to my second matchup of the night. There's a lot of games here. I still haven't decided which matchup I'm going to go with. So I want to mention this real quick. Steven Stamkos and Victor Hedman. Those are 2 big name guys that are going to be super expensive, over $8,000 in price, but respectively so. I still think Victor Hedman is the best defenseman in the NHL. I think Cale Makar is going to win the Norris Trophy this year, but I still think Victor Hedman is the best defenseman in the NHL. And, Cale Makar is closing that gap. But
I'm not going to argue with you on that one. Victor Hedman is the real deal. Yeah. He's the prototypical defenseman. He's a leader. He does everything. I'm with you 100%. Makar is coming, but I'm still, if I'm picking one D-man, I'm going Hedman all day.
It's Hedman, yeah. So can't go wrong with either Stamkos or Hedman, but the game that I was also looking at after watching them play this weekend is the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Philadelphia Flyers. You mentioned it. Jack Eichel seems to be fitting in real nice now. Playing Max Pacioretty's back in the lineup. Huge. They seem to have a little bit of chemistry. They're both on the top power play. Slot Shea Theodore in that situation, situation right there for any other team, for any team playing the Vegas Golden Knights, they've got problems. So Max Pacioretty, Jack Eichel, Shea Theodore, can't go wrong with any of those guys. I don't think you'll be able to get all 3 if you're going to, if I suggested if you go with guys from the Blues Ottawa game, but you'll definitely be able to get 2 of them because you got to save up for a goaltender as well. And like you mentioned, you can't go wrong with Robin Leonard in this situation, especially going up against the Flyers team that has been absolutely very, 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 very bad this year.
That was a lot of varies, and I'm here for it. I think also at the end of the day, sure, the Golden Knights, just squeaked out a 2-1 win, but a win is a win. Jack Eichel played great, got the game winner. These are these confidence things that really start to build for a guy who hasn't played a lot of hockey. And, watching him play, this guy is very much for real, can skate, can shoot, can pass, big body. I think the Vegas Golden Knights, we talked a lot about Alex Tuch and Peyton Krebs, and this being a good deal for both teams and 2 teams at different points in their journeys towards a cup. But Jack Eichel, especially with Mark Stone being out, which is absolutely huge for the Knights. Like, where would they be without Eichel right now? Yeah. Who knows?
It would definitely be tough. There's still some, they got to figure out what's going to be going on with their cap space because Stone and, Martinez are still on the IR.
True.
Heading into the playoffs, it might work out, but it might not. They got to move some things around to figure out what they're going to do with the cap space.
Good point.
That's just, the trouble of making these type of deals. That's what happens. But again, they got Jack Eichel in the trade. So you can't, say anything wrong about it because they got one of the best hockey players in the NHL on their team. So good for the Vegas Golden Knights. Some work to be done for the cap space moving forward. But as well, with the two matchups that I mentioned, I would also look to the Anaheim Ducks versus Chicago Blackhawks game for cheaper options. Jonathan Taves, Tyler Johnson, they're back in the lineup for the Blackhawks. Brandon Hagel, he's having a tremendous year. He's been slotted down
piece as well. Trade piece playing well.
He's been slotted down to the third line as well. So there's a lot of value and cheaper options in that game that you can find to pair up with the other matchups that Flip and I have suggested. We're gonna get into big time bets very, very soon, but like Flip said from the top of this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now very, very hard to find what you need in local chain auto parts stores in stock. It's very difficult. I know I've had trouble with it, very often with my car. It's very hard to find what you need and what you need to be in stock when you need it. So you have the devices at home and in your pocket with access to rockauto.com. And this will save you time. It will save you money. And, why choose spending 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership when you can save your money and your time buying from rockauto.com? For example, if you buy a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, they're super expensive, $350. When you buy from rockauto.com, it's $250. So you're saving money, you're saving time when you go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts they have available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. They have amazing selections, reliable low prices, all the parts for your car or truck that you'll ever need from rockauto.com. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, which also includes YouTube. So please hammer the subscribe, hammer the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. We've gotten a couple messages on Twitter as well. So message us on Twitter. We'll help you out with some trades and some things heading before the fantasy trade deadline, moving into the playoffs. So message us on there. Leave some comments on the YouTube video. We appreciate it all. Thank you so much. With that being said, it's now time for Flip and I to make you some money with big time bets, where the money's made, where the dough rolls out. A lot of games, Flip, a lot of juicy games. It was hard choosing just 3 for Tuesday's, big time bets.
Yep.
I'll get it going.
Please do.
Austin Matthews, anytime goal against the Seattle Kraken.
Big week.
He's going to win for the Leafs. Big week. Mm-hmm. They need to bounce back. It's a back-to-back Columbus Blue Jackets Monday night, Seattle Kraken Tuesday. Anytime goal, Austin Matthews, he's going to win the Rocket Richard this year. You're hearing it here. I don't want to say for the first time because a lot of people say that, but you're hearing it here first.
You're hearing it here at least second or third.
At least second or third.
Hey, the Leafs, this isn't a Toronto Maple Leafs show, and I think we do a good job of talking about all the teams in the league, but we know that the Leafs are near and dear to our hearts, and they are in trouble. The one thing that's going well for them right now is Austin Matthews' game at all ends of the ice. He's on fire. He's the very, very much the real deal. And right now in position, I would say in very advantageous situation to also win the Hart Trophy. He's going to be right in that mix. He needs to have a big week. The Leafs play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. The Kraken Tuesday, the Coyotes Thursday, and the Sabres Sunday. They need 3 wins. That has to be 3 wins. The pressure is on in Toronto, and we talked about them on yesterday's episode, Steele, that one bad goal, you can almost feel like they're ready to crumble. So I think you have to ride Matthews because as he needs to carry this team right now because no one else is stepping up.
Yeah, and it is difficult. You've mentioned this before that the Boston Bruins are nipping at their heels right now. I just checked. They've the Leafs do have 1 game in hand, but the Bruins are 2 points back. So they need to win these games. These games are must-win games because they're against the lower-tier teams in the NHL. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. It needs to get done this week if they want to turn things around.
Yep.
I usually, correlate or connect my DFS selections with my big-time bets. That's what I've done here again.
Yep.
The St. Louis Blues on the puck line against the Ottawa Senators. Ville Husso's been absolutely incredible since coming in of relief for Jordan Binnington. I believe he'll get the start again.
He's expected to.
He is expected to, so just look for that. But we mentioned it. They have 3 absolute studs for the 3 lines they have going up. They've been absolutely rolling out the door, producing offensively. So I love what I'm seeing from the St. Louis Blues. So I'm taking them on the puck line, and then I'm taking the Golden Knights on the money line against the Flyers. That is going to be my lock of the night as well. I just think with the way Jack Eichel seems to be settling in right now, Now's the time to be betting on the Vegas Golden Knights.
Pacioretty's back as well. The book is still out on Mark Stone, but if they can get him back even in a week or 2 ahead of the playoffs, if they're still in the mix, it'll be absolutely huge. We just talked about the effect Jack Eichel is having. So I think you have to go with the Vegas Golden Knights, who, I like the angles for the teams that have a lot more to play against. Sure, these other teams, you said it, they're not going to roll over. They're professionals. They're still playing to win every single night. But down the stretch, more often than not, going with the team with a lot left to play is going to win you more often than not. Yeah. So Vegas here, you have to go with Vegas against, you mentioned it. Philly's played a little bit better of late, but, they might have a bunch of trade pieces moving in and out. So who knows? Steele, this is an 11-game board, and I have 3 picks for you, but I'm going back to the well. I don't know if you remember a week or 2 ago, I did a little triple dip in the same game.
Oh, you're doing it again.
With the Vancouver Canucks. And I did a player prop, the winner of the game and the over-under, and it all banged. I'm doing the same thing here, and I don't think you would predict which game I'm doing it in. It's the Arizona Coyotes and Detroit Red Wings game.
Oh, God.
Hang with me. Jakub Vrana is returning from a lengthy upper body injury. I believe it was a shoulder. I really, really like that kid's game from an offensive sniping standpoint. All kinds of goal-scoring talent there. I've also talked about how and I know you like them too, where the Red Wings are starting to point the needle. Man, that team has a lot of good young players. So Jakub Vrana is back for the first time, home against the Arizona Coyotes, who have won 2 in a row. But when I look at this situation, Steele, man, Vrana's getting slotted in on the second line next to Robbie Fabry and Pius Suter, which means Bertuzzi slots up the lineup and is now forming a very nasty top line with Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond. That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Dylan Larkin has also been sensational this season, and no one's talking about it. 27 goals and 29 assists for 56 points in 51 games. The Detroit captain is red hot right now as well. I believe he has 3 or 4 points in his last 5 games. The last 2, he's been held off the score sheet, but that's okay. In come Arizona. Just in time. I like this to go 3 ways. Red Wings, money line, -175. Dylan Larkin, anytime assist, playing on that top line now with arguably one of the best rookies in the game right now, and Tyler Bertuzzi, who's having a great season as well. Dylan Larkin, anytime assist. And I like the over here, Steele. Arizona has won 2 in a row, but they play bad on the road. They're just a bad team. The total has gone over in 6 of Arizona's last 7 games when playing against Detroit. Both teams are actually starting to click offensively. So I want to give the Arizona Coyotes, they're playing in crooked. Did they score 8 goals the other night? Nick Schmaltz had a crazy night.
7 points.
I'm fired up. I love this spot for the Red Wings at home with Vrana coming back. Should really fire up this lineup. I also think, and I saw your face when you thought about how nasty that top line is going to look. That's a lot of speed, a lot of skill, and we know the Arizona Coyotes do not have the defensemen to deal with that. I'll leave this lastly for my over bet. Both teams are the bottom 2 in penalty killing teams. They suck on the PK. This is going to be a high-scoring game. Red Wings, money line, -175. The over, 5.5. That could easily be higher. I'll take that at -120. And for my lock of the night, give me Dylan Larkin anytime assist on a new revamped top line with Bertuzzi and Raymond. Come on now. Let's get this paper, Steele.
Flip, going back to the trifecta here.
Triple
3
dip.
bets from the same game. I love it. Lock of the night, anytime assist from Dylan Larkin. My lock of the night is going to be the Golden Knights on the money line versus the Flyers. This is where the money's made. Pencil it in, lock it in, put your bets down, make your money. Thank us later. And thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your first listen every day. If you want more gambling advice, if we're not giving it to you, what you should do is go listen to Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert and insight analysis from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all podcast platforms, just like this podcast right here. So please make sure you press and hit the follow and subscribe button. I say this every time, but Flip and I super appreciate all the support and all the love you give us out there. So thank you so much for riding with us. We love it out there. So thank you for hitting the subscribe. Please make sure you tell your friends and family members. We need all the support out there. Thank you so much for that. Once you hit the subscribe and follow button, you'll get the latest episodes of Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as it's available each and every day. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.